Well, Jeff, it's been hard to miss stories about Trump demolishing the east wing of the White House to construct his 90,000 square foot presidential ballroom, which he had promised would leave the east wing totally untouched. There is definitely a tech tie in to this story in terms of who is essentially funding the construction.
Yeah, and the project is being funded not by taxpayers, so that's good, but funded by hundreds of millions of dollars, and the number seems to change a little bit depending on who's saying it and when, but at least hundreds of millions of dollars in private donations. And it may not be surprising to learn that these are largely from major companies like Amazon, Google, Meta, Apple, Microsoft, along with some big crypto interests, some defense contractors, and even a couple telecom companies to boot, all of whom, as anyone can well imagine, have reasons to want to curry favor with America's most transactional president ever.
This is all a little sus, as the kids say. And speaking of other Trump driven changes, with respect to law enforcement and border security, including expanding the use of facial recognition tech to track people who are entering and leaving the U.S. Starting late December, U.S. border authorities can require non Americans to be photographed at airports and border crossings. And Jeff, it's worth mentioning that the regulations really leave open the possibility of collecting fingerprints or DNA as well.
Yeah, and but apparently it might take, I think the estimate was maybe up to 5 years to get all of these things in place, but I think they have the permission to do it as of December 26th or late December or something of this year. So that's kind of crazy. And too much reliance on tech does have some dangerous consequences from time to time. And a teenager in Baltimore recently discovered that when his high school's AI powered security system thought that a scrunched up empty bag of chips in his pocket was a gun. And this resulted in a bunch of police cars arriving on the scene, ordering the teacher to get down on the ground. The kid was like, I thought I was going to die, kind of thing. And it was all over a chip bag. So thankfully, no one was hurt. But, we've talked a lot about the damage chatbots can do to kids sort of psychologically, emotionally. I think we might need to pay a little more attention to how the surveillance state is evolving in some potentially dangerous ways as well.
And Jeff, just before we move on to the next story, I wanted to ask you about this because both of us have teenagers who are in high school here in Canada. And I have never, ever heard of any type of system like this as far as AI being used to detect people walking in with weapons. And I think it just really goes to show you that the different type of threat that many students in the US face.
Oh, absolutely. Like the school shooting stuff, it's tragic, but it's, uh, what's one of the biggest differences between Canada and the States? And it's just like the old Kids in the Hall skit when they're on the beach in Cuba, and the Cuban kid thinks that the guy on the beach is in America. I guess it's probably in Mexico, not Cuba. But the Mexican kid on the beach is like, "What's a Canadian?" And the Scott Thompson or whoever is like, "It's just like an American, but without a gun." And honestly, we've gotten some bigger differences lately, but we just don't see stuff like that in our schools, thankfully, very often at all. And so, yeah, we don't have the same need for that kind of tech, but you can see how things can go wrong, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about the potential bursting of the AI bubble due in part to circular financing in a previous The Other Mac, which is getting a lot of attention online. I think this is a hot topic for so many people. But I think we found yet another example of how giant US companies are engaging in similar questionable practices. Namely, it seems that XAI and SpaceX are buying up considerable numbers of Tesla's Cybertrucks. It should be noted that Cybertrucks are not selling that well at all, which does not surprise me because they are horrific looking vehicles. They don't belong on any of our streets. And it is also worth noting that three of those companies are run by none other than Elon Musk, who has a real vested interest in improving Cybertruck sales.
Yeah, they're like his little babies. So Kelsey there, but yeah, what a shady way to get around that. In other news about car makers that may make people a bit nervous in terms of the over embracing of technology. It was a few weeks ago now, but let's not forget that there was a software update on some specific line of Jeep hybrids that left some of those vehicles inoperable and included some instances where the Jeeps lost power after the software update had happened, they lost power while they were driving. And so that's obviously very dangerous. And it's a bit weird to think of a software update being able to brick your car.
Absolutely. I do want to mention as well, because we do have Cory Doctorow, who is on this episode. Super excited for everybody to hear that interview. And one of the things that he talked about, Jeff, at this conference that we recently attended is the fact that many car mechanics are actually paying about $10,000, I think it's a year, to be able to have the privilege, and I put that word privilege in quotes, to be able to basically fix cars like many of the luxury cars out there. And of course, he's been fighting for the right to repair for a really long time. And I think it's worth mentioning that we've gotten into this place, I think, with vehicles that not only do they have almost too much tech in them, they're increasingly more expensive to be able to repair, and only a few people are able to do just that. So
Yeah,
everything trickles down to more expenses for the end consumer.
no doubt.
Now, want to talk about a story about Electronic Arts. I remember when you worked there, and this was a company that was recently bought by a consortium of buyers in a $55 billion purchase. This is the largest leverage buyout in history. And now Electronic Arts has announced a partnership with Stability AI to quote, co develop transformative AI models, tools, and workflows. As someone who knows EA really well, what do you think of this story?
Well, if you haven't worked inside a big gaming company, you may not realize exactly how many talented people work on a big name video game. Like there, dozens and dozens of people. So I have to imagine there's a lot of people in the mix a bit worried about their jobs. And given that, Stability AI's most famous tool is the AI image generator Stable Diffusion, I expect a lot of those people most worried are artists. And frankly, it's hard as an artist to imagine getting a much higher paying job than you'd get at EA. So I'm sure that's a big worry. Of course, that's not how Electronic Arts or other gaming companies want to paint this kind of adoption, but, we'll see. Time will tell.
We are hearing more and more stories in terms of the reaction to AI being used in all type of creative industries. And I think it's fair to say that someone who wouldn't be in favor of this news is director Guillermo del Toro, who was on a press tour for his Frankenstein adaptation. And he said he would rather die than use AI. And he also likened the tech bros behind AI to the arrogant scientist who created Frankenstein's monster, who he said is kind of blind, creating something without considering the consequences. And I have to think we have to take a pause and consider where we're going. So good to hear his perspective on this.
Some very wise words by a very creative guy. So that's totally interesting. Let's hop over the pond a bit. The European Commission has declared that TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram have breached the EU's Digital Services Act. And this requires that researchers have to be able to access these platforms' data to assess the impacts on mental and physical health on users. So specifically, it accused those companies of having, quote, put in place burdensome procedures and tools for researchers to request access to public data. This often leaves them with partial or unreliable data, impacting their ability to conduct research, such as whether users, including minors, are exposed to illegal or harmful content. So more business as usual for the big social media companies, really.
Jeff, it's really shocking to me that they don't seem to care. I mean, we've kind of gotten to that point, and I made a comment recently that when it comes to some of these big tech companies, there was a point, and maybe I'm not remembering this correctly, but there was a point when they actually did care about the public reaction to what they were doing. They did care about laws that were put in place, but now we've really moved to this period where it is kind of move fast and break things, which goes back to the original days of some of the big tech companies.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it seems that's happened at a societal level in addition to these guys. So I don't know if they're a reflection of us or we're a reflection of them, but you absolutely have the trajectory on that problem pointing the right direction as in it's increasing for sure.
And speaking a little bit more about Meta, it looks like they'll be partnering with military tech company Anduril, who make military drones, border control tech, and lots more to create an AI-powered mixed reality helmet system called Eagle Eye. Like, I mean, cringeworthy.
Now, I have to say, as a guy who grew up watching Vietnam movies and spent a couple years in the Armed Forces Reserve, having worked in a video game industry, this actually seems sort of cool to me. uh, and the way I look at it is, it's not an offensive weapon. If this can help save military lives and civilian lives, then that's great. And to be very clear, I sure don't feel the same way about like killer AI drones or those terrifying robot dogs. So, but this could be helpful and looks like it's not as problematic as a lot of things they've been working on.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit tainted by some of the things that Meta has done. So anytime you say military tech and Meta, I get sort of a reaction that is akin to vomiting. So that might be part of it. Well, listen, if they wanted to make long marches easier on soldiers, then they could really look to Nike's new Project Amplify, which the company calls the world's first powered footwear system to boost running and walking speeds. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Apparently, it still is in that testing phase, but it's one of a few of tech related forays that Nike has recently announced.
Yeah, I think they got like 400 people testing it now, and it's interesting to see like a footwear company coming up with a tech product. So that's something about the times we're in. But yeah, pretty cool. And my understanding is it's more for like casual use. It's not for competitive sports and stuff. But speaking of competitive sports, why don't we close off with a fun sports related story? Obviously, Canada's only League Baseball team, the Toronto Blue Jays, has made the World Series. But it's looking like there's a bit of a downside if you're a home team fan living closer to the Rogers Centre in Toronto where the games are played, Amber.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a little like if you switch from streaming CBC radio on your phone to listening to it in the car when you head to work. There is a time lag between the live broadcast and the streaming broadcast. Well, it looks like the time difference between hearing the Rogers Stadium erupt when the Jays get a home run and seeing the home run streaming on your TV can actually be in the area of around 30 seconds. So maybe you want to watch with some noise canceling headphones. That's probably a good idea if you are living nearby. This is a really interesting story. I would never have thought of this.